Well, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's a wonderful world, does it? Especially when we're preparing for hurricanes and watching the news and seeing the destruction that happens here and there. And so it's easy for us as human beings to fall into that fear state and think it's not such a wonderful world, and what in the world is happening in the world, and what can I do to help? And this is certainly an area that I think about a lot, and I fall into my humanness and my helplessness and hopelessness state when I look at the situation and ask, what can I do? So I've been thinking about that a lot this week, especially with this, how do we live our best lives? How do we live the best life possible? Are we here to save the planet? Are we here to change human consciousness? What are we here for? And I've been really soothed and made to feel more optimistic by some of the sources that I've looked at. Some of them made me scared, and some of them made me more optimistic. But one of them really put me right on track with what I need to do. And what I need to do most of all is connect with Source for guidance. That's what I need to do to live my best life. So, but before I talk about that, I want to talk about some individuals we watched and saw. We watched a documentary on NPR about Raul Julia's life. Did any of you see that yet? Raul Julia is an actor from Puerto Rico who made his transition in the 90s. But you'll remember him if you ever saw The Addams Family. He was Gomez. And many other movies. He was a wonderful actor. And he was from Puerto Rico. His mother was a opera singer. And his father was a DJ, and they were sort of the life of the party. And he became the exemplification of all that. In high school, he learned English starting in grammar school in Puerto Rico. And in high school, he did a Shakespearean play, and he loved reciting that poetry from the stage. So he decided that acting is what he wanted to do. So he went to New York City, where he found there was nothing available for Puerto Rican young men in the acting field. And he saw it as such a high profession, and there was nothing else he was going to do. He was going to be an actor. So he basically gave away his talent, doing free Shakespearean shows, street shows, taking it to the neighborhoods. He spent years and years just being a very struggling artist and having difficulty even eating. But he was very clear that's what he wanted to do. So eventually things got better. He became very well known on Broadway. And because he could sing, he could dance, he could act, and he did many, many fabulous parts. But what was really interesting when they showed the clips is he just enlivened every part that he did. He was so expressive, and just everyone loved it and loved him. So he ended up doing a number of movies as well. But if you get to see that piece, I thought, what a great example of living your best life. He did end up marrying a dancer, having a couple of children, was successful enough to have a place in upstate New York in the country where he just enjoyed family life. And he made his transition early in his 50s, but with cancer. But before he did that, he was able to dedicate his life to certain important causes, like the Hunger Project. And he was passionate about that too, about, having there be no starvation on the planet. And so he was able to really participate in certain causes and give his art and his talent and have a full family life. So he really was a wonderful example of living your best life. He just gave his all to everything he did. Now, the source of my inspiration for going direct to get guidance was Neil Donald Walsh. I watched something of his on the computer. Are you familiar with him? He wrote Conversations with God. I thought there were 3 books years ago, and that was it. Well, I find out he's written 10 now. And I think the fourth one is about guiding people for living their best life. But at any rate, he's a good example because before he wrote Conversations with God, he had been in the publishing business, and his life had really gone into the depths of the dumps. He, first of all, lost his job, and then eventually lost his family, his house. He ended up being homeless and living in a tent in a park. And even that went downhill, because after living in a tent in the park and being homeless, then he had no phone number. This was before cell phones. He had no phone number to contact when he would apply for jobs. He had no place to groom himself. He had no shower, no place to shave. So his appearance and his ability to get a job just kept going further and further down until in despair, he just started talking to God, basically accusing God and saying, what is going on? Why can't I get myself up from here? And to his great surprise, God started talking back, and he started writing it down. You see, what he had believed prior to that time is God doesn't talk to everybody. You have to be worthy. You might have to be Moses or something for God to talk to you, Who am I for God to talk to? So he's very suspicious of it and not sure what he was getting at all, but he continued to write it down. So the night after I watched it, I was having a dream that was emotionally very painful for me. I've been in this science of mind, for over 50 years now. No, not quite 50 years, 40-something years. So I am very trained in how my conscious mind, where it goes and what I allow it to do. And I don't allow it to go into fear and pain very often. But when I sleep, my subconscious will take me where it thinks I need to go to heal something. And it can be very emotionally painful. So I was experiencing a dream that was very painful. And I was worried about a grandchild. And I was imagining what this grandchild was going through right now. And it was very, very painful. So when I woke up the next morning, in my meditation, I said, I would like to achieve this state that I can hear from God. And I've had this experience before, but what I do is I tend to forget, and I get busy living my life, and I don't go there regularly. So I went there and said I would like to hear from God about this situation. And my question was, and it's a good thing to ask questions, by the way. When you speak to God, don't just wait to have the Word of God channeled to you. Ask a question. I said, how can I live my best life? How can we live our best lives? And I heard, to live in peace and joy. Well, I liked it, and I immediately felt the peace and joy. But that wasn't really answering my full question, because my full question had in it, was sort of like, how can we change the consciousness of all humanity? How can we save the planet? What should we be doing right now to achieve these things? And I get to live in peace and joy. And I had a conversation with Bob about that, and I said, but I don't think you can really do what we need to do to save the planet and all this in peace and joy. And he said, who can't? And I said, well, yeah, I guess you could. When I imagine Jesus' life, he didn't go around straining and condemning. He seemed to live pretty much a life of peace and joy and teaching. And so I said, well, I guess I think I can't. It's not that nobody can, but I was thinking that I had to be activated by pain or anger or upset, to be motivated to do the right thing. So it was a shift in my thinking to say, no, I can do what I think is the right thing in peace and joy. And that there's nothing that I need to do to be pleasing God right now. That God is already pleased with me. God is already pleased with you. God is already pleased with each one of you. There's nothing you have to do. It's like I shared in the guided meditation, you know, when you hold a newborn infant and you're just so thrilled with this new life and the possibility. You don't think, now this infant will please me only if it becomes a great this or that, if it's an excellent student, if it's very creative, if, you know, this, that. You don't place any expectations on a newborn. You're just so blown away that this is going to be a new life that's going to express however it expresses. And isn't that exciting and wonderful? And isn't that enough? Well, I think the same is true for us, that there's no expectation of God that we be or do or have any certain thing. We're here. We've got free will. We get to choose what it is. Now, I think that as we become aware, and what I see happening with the people that are in our movement, as we become aware that we are part of the divine, that we are part of God, that we are also inherently good, that we tend to choose the right thing. We tend to do the good. We tend to do what's right. And when it comes to things that I think need to be done right now, we need to do to change how we're behaving, I think we tend to waken up to that pretty naturally and do the right thing, do what we think is right. I was also impressed this week with the young girl from Sweden who came over by boat. She is on a mission to rescue the planet from its destruction from global warming. She's 16 years old, and she says, I'm on the autism spectrum. So she wouldn't fly over because she does not endorse flying. It uses too much fuel, and it dirties the environment. So she came over in a sailboat, and she was explaining her mission, just to wake humans up to do the right thing. Because she says, you know, because I'm on the autistic spectrum, I don't take my cues of how to behave based on what other human beings are doing. And she said, I think most of us are. We know this, we know it's a problem, we know that we need to be doing something different, but we look around and nobody's doing anything different, so we just do that too. She says, I don't take my cues from what other people are doing. So I'm definite about what I'm doing, what we need to be doing, and she's on a mission to wake people up. I think she's doing the right thing for her. I think she's a wonderful example. I don't think that means that we're doing everything wrong. I just think that we're waking up consciously. And as what I see in our movement is that when we know that we're part of God, we also know everything's part of God. We know the plants are, we know the animals are, the whole animal kingdom. We are not here to have dominion over them, except to take care of them, to know that they are one with us. We're all expressions of God. Life is an expression of God. And I see our people knowing that. When I was first introduced to the concept of Earth as Gaia, Earth as a living being, it was totally new to me because I thought of the Earth as rock and dirt and stone and a little fire. But the Gaia concept is that no, the Earth is a living being. The Earth is our mother. And you know, we need to love our mother and care for our mother. So I do see our people doing that in consciousness. I see our people knowing that in consciousness. And so what the right thing to do is, I think, just to wake up, just to be aware, to live our life in joy and in peace. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to be warriors. We don't have to tell other people what to do. We simply follow what is the right thing for us to do. And I think that's how we live our best life. It's also involving in lifting others and helping others. Interestingly, one of the questions was something like that: how can you live your best life? And Neil Donald Walsh went into, you live your best life, it's not about you, it's about what you do for others. And that also is a theme that comes across in the near-death videos we watch and experiences. The question is always, what did you do to help others? Not what contribution did you make, what great discovery did you make, what invention did you do? Those are never the questions. The question is, what did you do in your life to serve others, to help others? So because others are a part of us, they are a part of who we are. And when we see suffering, when we see a need, it's incumbent upon us to try to help. And so that is also a way for you to live your best life. And you might ask, in what way do you do that? It might be with your own family, and that's plenty enough. That is plenty enough. And some people have professions where they serve others, but that is one of the most important things you need to do for living your best life, is to be aware of others and how you can serve them. So, your answer for how you live your best life is different from yours, and that's the way it should be. But it's a question you may ask, and I recommend you go to the source to ask it. So it is.
Thank you.